Welcome back, everyone, to The Deep Dive. This time, we're taking a deep dive into the global film and TV industry.
Ooh, sounds exciting.
It is. We've got a lot to cover, from surprising streaming moves to big-budget productions to, get this, a look at how Hollywood handles its feuds.
Hollywood feuds, that sounds juicy.
Oh, it is. But first, let me set the stage. We've got a whole stack of articles here covering all sorts of industry happenings.
So what's the mission for today's deep dive? What are we hoping to uncover?
Well, I think it's all about understanding this massive shift happening across the entertainment world. It's not just about what we're watching, but how we're watching it and who's calling the shots.
I like it. So where do we begin?
How about with a real head-scratcher? Warner Bros. Is streaming full movies for free on YouTube.
For free, really. In this age of streaming subscriptions, that's practically unheard of.
I know, right? It's a bold move. Makes you wonder what they're up to.
Well, I do have some thoughts on that, but first I'm curious, have you noticed any changes in how you're watching movies and TV shows?
That's a good question. I definitely find myself spending more time on YouTube.
Yeah, me too. And it's not just for funny cat videos anymore.
Right. It's like YouTube's not just for those quick hits anymore. I'm watching longer videos,
Good.
even full documentaries.
Exactly. And that's actually reflected in some data I came across from Digital Eye.
Oh, tell me more.
Well, get this. YouTube has officially surpassed Netflix as the top streaming platform globally. And they're seeing longer watch times overall, not just for those short clips they were once known for.
Wow, that's a big shift. So maybe Warner Bros. Is just trying to meet viewers where they already are?
That could be part of it. But it's still a risky strategy, especially with those movie choices. They're putting out critically acclaimed films like Michael Collins and The Mission right alongside, well, let's just say some less celebrated titles.
You mean like Dungeons and Dragons from 2000 and The Adventures of Pluto Nash?
Exactly. It's quite a mix.
I guess it throws the doors wide open for discovery, right?
Yeah.
People might stumble upon a hidden gem they never would have watched otherwise.
That's true. But the big question for me is, how do they plan to make money from this? That's the real puzzle, especially when other studios are clinging to those subscription models.
That's a really good point. It makes you wonder about the long-term viability of the subscription model, doesn't it? Especially when you see giants like Disney tightening their belts.
Oh, are they? I haven't heard about that.
Yeah, they just announced a major cut to their content budget for 2025. Like $1 billion less than they originally planned.
$1 billion. Wow. That's a huge chunk of change. What do you think's going on there?
Well, maybe it's a sign that even the biggest players are feeling the pressure. The streaming market can't grow forever, and production costs are skyrocketing.
Yeah, I guess unlimited spending isn't sustainable. It makes you wonder if this is the start of a trend. Are we going to see a shift away from the spend big to win big mentality?
It's possible. And if so, how will that impact the kinds of films and shows that get made? Will we see fewer of those big-budget blockbusters and more emphasis on those niche, smaller-scale projects?
That's an interesting question. It could be a good thing, though, right? More room for creativity and unique voices. But who knows? The industry loves to keep us guessing.
That's for sure. There's never a dull moment. But hey, speaking of things that aren't working out as planned, have you noticed how streamers seem to be struggling with game shows? It's like they just can't crack the code, no matter how much money they throw at them.
You're right. It is curious, isn't it? You'd think with all the reality TV fans out there and the easy access on streaming platforms, game shows would be a slam dunk. But they haven't quite figured it out yet.
It could be that those traditional weekly episodes just don't translate well to streaming, where people are used to binge watching.
It could be. That anticipation of waiting a week for the next episode, that shared experience of watching live, maybe that's lost in the on-demand world.
Maybe. But I think there's still potential. Some producers are experimenting with things like interactive elements to get viewers more involved, or even those global competition formats.
Oh, like those shows where contestants from all over the world compete against each other?
Exactly. I think it's all about adapting the format to the medium and finding ways to engage the audience differently.
And speaking of adapting, let's shift gears and talk about the UK. Their film and TV production industry is booming right now, isn't it?
It is. It's incredible. Their spending in 2024 was something like $6.9 billion.
Wow, that's huge. What's driving that growth?
Well, they've always had a strong reputation for quality productions, both in front of and behind the camera.
Yeah, their talent pool is incredible. And let's not forget those breathtaking locations they have.
Oh, those locations. They've got everything from majestic castles to rolling countryside Perfect for any genre you can imagine.
Oh, definitely. Think about Peaky Blinders. They're even getting their own movie now.
I know. And then you've got the Knives Out sequel, which was also filmed there.
It seems like everyone's heading across the pond these days. But I also read that while those big productions are thriving, domestic high-end TV production in the UK actually took a hit.
Yeah, I saw that too. Something like a 22% decline.
Interesting. So maybe there's a trade-off happening. They're becoming more of a hub for international productions, but their own homegrown TV industry is shrinking a bit.
Yeah, it definitely makes you wonder about the long-term implications. But hey, it's not all about the big studios. The UK has a thriving independent film scene, and it's getting some well-deserved recognition.
Oh, definitely. And they're supporting some really creative projects. Those Pitch Film Fund Awards, for example, highlighted some filmmakers doing really interesting things with modern adaptations of classic stories.
I love that. It's so important to champion those fresh perspectives.
It is. And it's not just about the stories, it's about the talent. Those award winners, Lizzie Hart, Grace Okyere-Fosu, Alice Johannessen, they're definitely names to watch.
I have to check out their work.
You should. Now, ready for something a little different? Let's talk about those Hollywood feuds. Those behind-the-scenes dramas are always captivating.
Oh, tell me about it.
Yeah.
The gossips, the power plays, it's like a whole other world behind those red carpets.
It is. But it's actually quite different from feuds in, say, politics or sports.
How so?
Well, in Hollywood, public spats are generally frowned upon. It's considered a sign of weakness, a desperate attempt to grab attention.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's all about discretion and strategy.
Exactly. The real battles happen behind closed doors. Publicly, it's all about maintaining that carefully crafted image.
That makes sense. It's all about reputation and perception.
Right. And sometimes those subtle feuds, those whispered campaigns, they can be even more powerful than any public outburst.
It's like a game of chess, where the most effective moves are often the quietest ones.
Exactly. And that's what makes those Hollywood feuds so fascinating. There's always more going on beneath the surface.
Agreed. It's a reminder that even in a world built on entertainment, there's always a deeper story waiting to be uncovered.
Well said. So now that we set the scene, are you ready to dive into some of the most intriguing developments shaking up the industry?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay, then let's start with a closer look at Warner Bros.' decision to stream those movies for free on YouTube. What do you think their end game is?
Well, it's clearly a bold move, especially when you consider how much other studios are investing in those paid streaming services.
Right. So, are they trying to disrupt the industry? Are they testing a new model? Or is it just a clever marketing ploy to draw more viewers to their YouTube channel?
It's hard to say for sure, but I think it speaks to a larger trend we've been talking about, the changing landscape of content consumption. People are spending more time online, more time on YouTube specifically, and less time tied to traditional TV schedules.
Absolutely. And that shift is forcing studios to rethink their distribution strategies. They can't just rely on those old models anymore. They have to meet viewers where they are.
Exactly. And maybe Warner Bros. Is betting that by offering some of their films for free, they can attract a wider audience, build brand loyalty, and ultimately generate revenue through advertising or other means.
It's a risky bet, but it could pay off. And it'll be fascinating to see how it plays out, especially as other studios grapple with the same challenges.
Agreed. This is just the tip of the iceberg, folks. We've got a lot more ground to cover, so buckle up.
I'm ready. Let's do it. It's a fascinating game they're playing, for sure. But let's move on to another big story, shall we? Disney slashing its content budget by $1 billion, that's a major move.
It is. And it kind of makes you wonder if those huge streaming budgets are sustainable in the long run.
Right. I mean, they've been spending like crazy to compete in the streaming wars, but maybe the tide is turning.
It's possible. Maybe they're realizing that quality trumps quantity. Or maybe it's just a strategic move to please investors. Who knows? These big corporations always have their reasons.
They do. But one thing's for sure, a $1 billion cut is going to have ripple effects throughout the industry. Could mean fewer big-budget blockbusters, more focus on smaller niche projects.
Maybe that's not such a bad thing. It could create more space for unique voices and fresh perspectives.
I agree. And speaking of things that need a fresh perspective, let's talk about those game shows. Why are streamers having such a hard time making them work?
It's baffling, isn't it? You'd think with the popularity of reality TV and the ease of access on streaming platforms, game shows would be a natural fit.
Right. But they haven't quite figured it out yet. Maybe it's the format, the traditional weekly episode structure. People are so used to binge watching now that waiting a week for the next installment just feels, well, old-fashioned.
Yeah, maybe that's part of it. Or maybe it's that sense of community you get from watching a game show live, that shared anticipation that's harder to replicate in the on-demand world.
That's a good point. That live element is definitely something special. But hey, some producers are getting creative. They're incorporating interactive elements, letting viewers vote or play along at home.
Right. And there are those global competition formats, like bringing together contestants from different countries. I think it's
Yeah.
all about adapting to the medium and finding new ways to engage the audience.
Exactly. And speaking of adapting, let's shift gears and talk about the UK film and TV industry. Things are really looking up over there, aren't they?
They are. I mean, a 31% increase in production spending, that's massive.
It is. What do you think's driving that boom? Is it just those big US-backed productions heading across the pond?
That's definitely part of it. Shows like Peaky Blinders, movies like the Knives Out sequel, those are huge draws. But I think it's more than that. The UK has a long history of producing high-quality film and television.
Oh, for sure. And they've got some incredibly talented people, both in front of and behind the camera, and those locations.
Don't even get me started on the locations.
Yeah.
Castles, countryside, historic cities, they've got it all. It's like a filmmaker's dream.
Plus, the UK government has been really supportive of the industry. Those tax incentives they offer are super attractive for international productions.
That's true. But here's something that surprised me. While US-backed productions are booming in the UK, domestic high-end TV production actually declined.
Yeah, I saw that too. Something like 22%, right?
Yep. It's kind of a mixed bag, isn't it?
It is. It makes you wonder if they're sacrificing their own homegrown industry to become this international production hub.
It's a good question. But hey, even with that decline, the UK is still producing some amazing work. And it's not just the big studios. The independent film scene is thriving too.
Definitely. Those Pitch Film Fund Awards are a great example of that. Supporting up-and-coming filmmakers, those fresh perspectives, it's so important.
It is. Those awards highlight some really creative projects, like those modern takes on classic stories. I'm thinking about Lizzie Hart's Kitty, which is based on The Taming of the Shrew. And then there's The Acres, a modern-day odyssey by Grace Okyere-Fosu.
And Flesh and Blood by Alice Johannessen, which draws inspiration from those ancient myths.
It's so great to see such diverse voices getting recognition. And speaking of things that need more recognition and understanding, let's talk about intimacy coordinators.
Yes. I think there are a lot of misconceptions about what they do.
Totally agree. It's not about censorship or limiting creativity. It's about ensuring that everyone on set, especially the actors, feels safe and comfortable during those intimate scenes.
Exactly. I think some people assume that intimacy coordinators are there to police everything, but it's really the opposite. They're there to facilitate open communication, establish clear boundaries, and help choreograph those sensitive scenes in a way that feels authentic and respectful.
Absolutely. It's about professionalism, respect, and creating an environment where everyone can do their best work.
Well said. It's encouraging to see more productions embracing the role of intimacy coordinators. It's a positive step towards a safer and more inclusive industry.
I agree. It's about time. It really is great to see that shift happening.
Yeah.
And it makes you realize there are so many moving parts to this industry, from those big picture trends to the individual choices made on each project. So I'm curious, of all the things we talked about today, what has you the most excited? What's at the top of your must-watch list?
Ooh, that's a tough one. So many interesting things on the horizon. But if I had to pick, I think Sleepwalker has really piqued my curiosity. That whole psychological thriller element, a woman battling sleep disorders, unsure of what's real, that's my kind of film.
Yeah, I can see why that one would grab your attention. And you're right, psychological thrillers seem to be having a moment right now. I wonder why that is.
Maybe it's a sign of the times. With all the uncertainty in the world, maybe we're drawn to stories that make us question reality, make us confront those darker aspects of the human mind.
It's like a way of processing our own anxieties through fiction. And
Yeah.
Hayden Panettiere, she's always so good at portraying those characters who are a little bit on edge.
Right. She always brings this intensity to her role, so I can only imagine how she'll tackle this one. It'll be interesting to see how much they lean into the psychological aspects, the blurred lines between dreams and reality.
Oh, chills. Okay, so Sleepwalker is a definite yes for you. What about The Greatest? What are you hoping to see from that series?
Well, for me, it's about capturing the essence of who Muhammad Ali was, not just as a boxer, but as a human being. He was such a complex figure, a champion athlete, a social activist, a symbol of resilience.
Absolutely. He
Yeah.
transcended the world of sports and became this global icon.
Yeah.
So it's not just about portraying his boxing career. It's about understanding his impact on society, his struggles, his triumphs.
Exactly. And I think the casting of Omari Hardwick and Dana Gourrier is really promising. They both have this presence, this gravitas that I think will do justice to the story.
Agreed. They're both such powerful actors. It's a series with a lot of potential, for sure. Now, on a completely different note, how about K-popped? Alsai and Megan Thee Stallion.
Yeah.
That's a combination I never would have predicted.
Right. It's like two worlds colliding, and I can't wait to see what happens. It'll be pure entertainment, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I also think it has the potential to be more than just a spectacle.
I think so, too.
Hmm.
There's that whole cultural exchange element.
Uh,
Will we see K-pop with a Western twist? Western music being influenced by K-pop?
and how will Psy and Megan Thee Stallion interact as judges? Will they clash? Will they complement each other? It's a fascinating dynamic.
I'm so curious to see how it unfolds. And, it's a reminder that the lines are blurring in the entertainment industry. Genres are blending, borders are being crossed, and it's creating some really exciting possibilities.
Oh, absolutely. And that brings us to another example of that blurring of lines. Tubi, a free streaming service, launching a scripted series with Lauren Graham.
The Z-Suite. I'm intrigued by that one.
Me too. It's a bold move for Tubi, and it shows how the streaming landscape is evolving. Who would have thought a few years ago that you'd have a free, ad-supported platform competing with the likes of Netflix and Hulu for original content?
Right. The playing field is leveling, in a way. And with Lauren Graham at the helm, I think the Z-Suite has the potential to be a real hit.
I agree. She's so talented, and that premise, a Gen X boss trying to understand her Gen Z employees, it's so relatable.
It is. We're all navigating those generational differences, whether it's at work, at home, or even just trying to figure out what the heck those TikTok trends are all about.
Exactly. It's a comedy, but I think it could also spark some important conversations about how we communicate and relate to each other across generations.
Well said. As we wrap up this deep dive, I can't help but feel a sense of awe at just how dynamic and ever-changing the entertainment industry is.
I know, right? It's a wild ride.
It really is. We've talked about streaming wars, budget cuts, evolving formats, unexpected collaborations, and it's clear that the old rules no longer apply.
The future is wide open, and it's anyone's guess what the entertainment landscape will look like in 5, 10, 20 years.
Exactly. So as we sign off, we want to hear from you. What are your predictions for the future of film and television? Head over to our social media pages and share your thoughts.
Will virtual reality become the new norm? Will AI be writing our scripts? Will we even be watching content on screens anymore?
Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, it's going to be an exciting journey. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.